Good morning and welcome to today's seminar, Defending EU Values in the Time of the War. First, I'll give word to our distinguished guest, Commission Vice President for Values and Transparency, Věra Jourová. Then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Urmas Reinsalu, will have the floor. And follow-up discussion will be moderated by our head of European Commission representation in Estonia, Vivian Loonela. But our distinguished guest, you have the floor.
Dear Minister, dear guests, it's a great pleasure for me to be in Tallinn today. Mul on hea meel olla Eestis. Does it work? I would do more. Once I gave a speech in Polish language. It was easier for me because, you know, I'm a Czech person and the languages are similar. I have a little bit of a trouble with your language. In fact, I only know terviseks, which is not very much appropriate to say now. But this is a serious topic, and I am really grateful for the organizers, for the minister and the organizers of this seminar to choose this topic of defending EU values in the time of the war, because This is a new situation, and I think that if we fail in defending our values, we will fail for decades ahead. So that's why I'm really grateful for having a chance to have a discussion today here with you. In the eyes of the world are looking towards the East again. I remember, as I said, I am Czech, in 1968, when I was growing up in the communist Czechoslovakia, I saw the Soviet tanks coming from the east. And today, Ukraine sees tanks, bombs, rockets, and soldiers coming from the same place. Russia is challenging not only the independence of Ukraine, not only the rule-based order and post-Cold War security arrangement in Europe. Kremlin decided to challenge everything you, Estonians, and other Central and Eastern European countries fought for only a generation ago: peace, democracy, and the rule of law. Today, I want to talk to you about us, about Europe, and what are the consequences for all of us of this brutal war. To understand the present, it's of course helpful to know the history. Just look at the walls of the building we are in. Today, this is the Democratic Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yet, until 1989, this was the headquarters of the Estonian Communist Party. Everywhere in the Central and Eastern Europe, from Tallinn, Riga, Vilnius, Warsaw, Prague, and all the way to the Black Sea, the Soviet Union held its authoritarian grip on power. Some of you still remember, like I do, a few features of the Soviet system. It made critical thinking a crime, a treason. It aimed at killing hope that better life is possible. It wanted to spread fear, so we subdue and obey. Luckily for our region, history has given us a chance to rebel and regain our freedom and independence. Here in Estonia, you sang your songs to demonstrate your courage. You created the Baltic Way from here to Vilnius just a year later. The power of music and holding hands was greater than a power of guns. I am recalling that because I see a certain tendency today, those of us who felt the footprints of the Soviet boots on our land knew full well what Putin's Russia is capable of. Those of us who rebelled against what seemed like an almighty Soviet Union also have had the courage to act in the most decisive way when it comes to the recent Russian aggression on Ukraine. And as a Czech national from Velvet Revolution generation, I think I have a feeling for what you felt here in Estonia. Even though the distance to drive from Tallinn to Berlin is shorter than to Prague, history has bound us and other Central and Eastern European nations together. We used to be a Soviet sphere of influence, and later on called post-communist countries or new democracies, and then finally new member states of the European Union. Today, standing in front of you, I feel history wants to remind us of our common legacy. So let me be blunt in my diagnosis. Estonia was right about Russia. Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland were right about Russia. Some others were not. I recall that until the invasion almost a year ago, every time I warned about the threat from Putin's regime, there were those who called me a Russophobe. Yet, because I spoke the truth, the Kremlin banned me from ever visiting Russia. and I wear this sanction as a badge of honor. I don't mention this to say, we told you so. I am saying this because today the debate is still ongoing, how to best react, how to help Ukraine, what arms and when to deliver it. And I want to say to those who hesitate, the Central and Eastern European nations told you what Putin is capable of and what he was going to do. So now, when in doubt, listen to the advice and follow the lead. Every minute of hesitation is costing lives. There cannot be a talk about European sovereignty if we cannot be decisive about security just behind our eastern border. We, Europeans, should be leading these efforts. Chancellor Scholz in Prague, in the Grand Hall of the Charles University, admitted that the center of gravity is moving eastwards in Europe. And I agree. Today, the nations of Central and Eastern Europe have a historical and moral obligation to remove the mental label of the new member states. We are sitting at the biggest democratic table in the world, the European Union. We must learn to speak in a way that others listen. We must get better in promoting our ideas and our vision of Europe on security, on defense, on economy, and on enlargement. Ladies and gentlemen, I have looked briefly to the west of Tallinn. Now I want to look again to the east. The Kremlin is fighting its war not only with bombs, but also with words. Since the war started, the Kremlin has unleashed a tsunami of propaganda. But it has been engaged in disinformation and foreign influence long before that. They have never underestimated the power of free speech in the democratic world. This is why they forbid it at home. I don't believe it is a coincidence that the first thing the Soviet troops did after Estonia proclaimed its independence on the 20th of August 1991 was to attack the Tallinna Teletorn, the Tallinn TV tower. They did the same in Prague in 1968. The target was the Czech broadcasting station. They knew back then, they know full well today what disinformation is a powerful tool. Estonian first president after regaining independence, Lennart Meri, recognized this power in a speech he gave in Belgium in 1992. He said, "We Estonians lived in the broadcast range of Finnish television and so were able to recognize Lech Wałęsa by his mustache. In the Soviet Union, this fact was a state secret, just as the fact that the peoples of Central and Eastern Europe were fighting for their human and civil rights." End of quote. In fact, he thought this ability to speak and listen to the news from behind the curtain made Estonians a nation of dissidents, and I think he was right. Russian state has engaged in the war of ideas to pollute our information space with half-truth and lies to create a false image that democracy is no better than autocracy. Today, this is a multi-million weapon of mass manipulation aimed both internally at the Russians as well as Europeans and the rest of the world. And we must say stop to this. We cannot close an eye to this, and we have to fight back. I want to pause for a minute about a difficult issue of the information war the Kremlin is waging on its own citizens. I know there are voices, especially now, that say we should give up on all the Russians. They support the Kremlin. It is their choice, many say. And I tend to reject this argument, not because I am an expert on Russian society, I am not, but because I have heard this argument before. This is what was said about the nations of Central and Eastern Europe during the Cold War. We were part of the price to pay for the so-called stability. Yet there were those that did not give up on us. I remember to this day when my parents were gathering around our radio to search and listen to the Radio Free Europe and the Voice of America. I still feel the unspoken anxiety of these moments. And for me as a child, it was difficult to differentiate between what I heard with my parents from these stations, from this broadcasting, and what I heard in official TV. Because I was tested at school. When I was 13, I was asked, what do you think about Charta 77? It was the organization established by Havel. The confusion in my head, suddenly to realize, oh my God, did I hear that at night with my father or in the afternoon on TV? So I remained silent, not to do harm to my parents. So these are my memories. But I promise not to speak too long, so I have long CV and long memories. So I will come back to the presents. So today, I believe we should not give up on the Russian society as well, regardless of how few or how many want to hear the real views and news, not Kremlin propaganda. And my very good friend, Andrus Ansip, always quotes Karl Popper by saying that optimism is our moral duty. I am convinced we have a moral obligation to support democratic ideals also in Russia, not with weapons, but with words. We must support those who want to fight against the tide and believe the Russian people ought to have a choice. This is why I came with the idea to launch a Radio Free Russia project. This does not mean establishing a brand new radio station. The times are completely different than at the beginning of Cold War when Radio Free Europe was created. I want to support those who are doing a lot of already, help them to create economy of scale and fill the gaps so that they can produce more content and distribute it more widely without any editorial interference. I want to support the idea of people to have the choice. We have a unique opportunity now because many independent Russian journalists were expelled. The new Novaya Gazeta gets published in Riga. The hubs of Russian journalists and activists are now in the EU. We need to create the conditions for them to work and tell the story of the EU they see and experience to their Russian audiences. It is not only a moral duty, it is in our self-interest. In the last part of the speech, I want to look at ourselves. We can only be credible in promoting democracy if our own house, our own European house, is in order. We have to make our democracies more resilient and stronger because, unfortunately, they are also under threat. And the threat level is rising. A key aspect of democracy are free and fair elections and the balance of powers. The idea is simple, that no one power, be it the government, the parliament, or the courts, is too powerful that they all balance each other. This is why we are so determined to uphold the rule of law and react when we see systemic risks to the independence of judiciary. This is why I proposed the European Democracy Action Plan only 3 years ago with its key pillars, such as strengthening elections integrity, fighting disinformation, and promoting media freedom and pluralism. This is why I want online platforms to become more transparent and more accountable. Fighting disinformation and promoting media freedom are two sides of the same coin. We have proposed the Media Freedom Act that will enshrine, for the first time in EU law, common safeguards to protect media pluralism and the editorial independence of the media. We have proposed the so-called anti-SLAPP directive to protect journalists and other human rights defenders from abusive lawsuits, and many other legislative and non-legislative initiatives. All of these actions have one common goal: to strengthen those that mean well against those who want to abuse the power. I count on Estonia and its government to support us in all the attempts to strengthen democracy in the EU as a whole and in each and every member state. Ladies and gentlemen, I started this speech by saying that to understand the present, it's helpful to know the history. This sentence resonates strongly in this important day when we remember the millions of Jewish women, men and children and all other victims, among them hundreds of thousands of Roma, murdered during the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism led to the Holocaust but did not end with it. Anti-Semitism is again on the rise in Europe, so we need to continue to fight against it. Peace and democracy are not granted once and for all. Democracy needs defenders, and it needs constant nurturing. And our democracies are not perfect. We have to continue to fix the problems of the people. But those of us who lived behind the Iron Curtain, those of us who understand the authoritarian playbook also used by Putin today, know that democracy is precious, mainly because it offers rights to individuals and makes people equal before the law. It offers us tools to control those in power and replace them if we are not satisfied. Our objective is clear: make our democracy stronger and restore faith in those who start doubting it. There is a saying that only those who lose something can know the real value of it. I realized this even more when I talked to young Ukrainians, the young students in Lviv last September, witnessing their hunger for being part of the European Union. The Ukrainians remind us that democracy is appealing and that the EU, as a peace project, is probably the best guarantor of rights and freedoms humans have ever created. Despite the risks, we will succeed because our union will be united not only by the value of the single market, but also with our values. In short, we need to channel in our democracies the spirits of Lennart Meri and Václav Havel. They were both statesmen with a special capital big S statesmen. They both are founding fathers of Estonian and Czech democracies, respectively. They projected charisma and respect also to their political opponents. They knew democracy is about building trust among each and every citizen rather than sowing hate and undermining institutions. I think we owe to these two gentlemen a greater attempt at being better Democrats. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I'll give word to Foreign Minister Urmas Reinsalu.
Dear friends, Vera, I'm so proud of receiving you here in Estonia, and I truly thankful for all these warm words towards Estonian people. And let me commend also your personal determination and all the Commission College determination in this crisis to act and to deliver to support Ukraine, to support victory of Ukraine. I would first commend important message Commissioner Jourová proposed to create a platform Radio Free Russia. When I visited last summer headquarters of Radio Free Europe, the journalists, people told me that after the start of this stage of war, Kremlin administration put around additionally to support propaganda only in Russian territory, $400 million. So if we will take perspectives, speaking about the Russian population and the propaganda and the media channels which are formally private but loyal to the administration, so the amount of the free media opportunities, well, over the borders, over the social media, it is less than 1 to 100. So this is a perspective. Only a small candle of truth in the very dark forest. And so this is an idea Estonian government, Estonia strongly supports. And we told also practical cooperation in the basis of this platform also that we are going to cooperate with Moldovan officials to deliver also, to give a certain basis of Estonian Russian-speaking channel also to deliver to Moldova. And I hope this cooperation project could be also somehow be involved in that pan-European effort. And in the same context about the freedom of media to enlighten the minds of people and give a choice is also very important during this war to tackle Russian propaganda. And honestly, I know the Commission is strongly behind that, but it needs member countries to implement. It needs also a consensus on creating new additional further sanctions. We have not done enough. Russian propaganda can still flow internationally. We have satellites owned by European companies. We are still, in some places, delivering Russian propaganda channels, and this is not okay. And Estonia, with several other countries, will address that issue to the 10th package, which is in the preparation phase of sanctions. Let me say that, paraphrasing Václav Havel, whom you referred yourself also, it is evident that a regime that has been built on lies and hatred will not prevail. We have to give precise moral and legal judgments to the crimes committed by Putin and his regime. Freedom starts from justice, and justice begins from truth, defining properly what is going on. And it helps us to keep focused in helping Ukraine, and is a clear sign of our determination, which is in combination brings us closer to the war end. Russian war of aggression against Ukraine is genocide. Estonia, also several other countries have recognized it as a genocide, and our continuing call is also to other countries to do it, because the justice begins from truth. Putin and his ideologies make here no secret. Their aim is to destroy Ukrainian statehood and nation. Denial of entire nation. Even Stalin, in his rhetorics, didn't deny to do that, to use a concept of denial of one nation as entity. In 30s, they recognized secret political bureau decision. Estonians and several other countries are what was enemy nations, but not the concept of denial of existence of a nation. Methods that are used to reach those goals by Putin and his regime are defined in the Genocide Convention, And we have to adhere to the definitions given by the Convention, and this forces us to do more. And this is closely connected to European values and our ability to protect them, and will be measured by our effectiveness to counter impunity. What is the aim of European Union? The aim is to defend peace and European values. And the most important European value, the first one, if we look the Treaty of European Union, is human dignity. And by all means, by all aspects, by all angles, the human dignity is in a most comprehensive manner attacked now in Ukrainian territory. Grave crimes committed by the aggressor in Ukraine should be addressed in proper legal way and format. Estonia strives for the solution that the war crimes and acts of aggression will be brought as soon as possible into a special tribunal. As a first step in creating such an international body, we welcome creating a special prosecutor's office in Hague. The European Union and the partners supporting Ukraine altogether have done a great deal by standing behind Ukraine. And let me stress, we have to do more, and we can to do more. Our support to Ukraine has to be all-encompassing, and it has strong political, economic, and military dimensions. And let me also stress that Russian aggression against Ukraine has changed the EU enlargement process. It might be even said that it has enlarged the meaning of it. It is evident that there is no alternative to bind Europe more strongly together, and Ukrainian accession is central and decisive in that respect. And Estonia full-heartedly, and I'm sure the objective criteria put on the table, of course they will be handled and evaluated in an objective manner, but if it's the case, we strongly advise and hope that the negotiation talks will start during this year. Ukrainian integration has a strong effect on the whole of Europe. I'm certain that our strategic and tactical compasses are now more precise than they were a year ago. There are less illusions about Russia, and it has become evident to more hearts and minds what kind of regime we are dealing with. And let me also state that today is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. On this day, every year, we are remembering the innocent victims, Jews from all over Europe, who were massacred because of the cruel, inhuman Nazi ideology. And on this day, we are used to repeat, never again. On the same territories where 8 years ago the Nazis were massacring Ukrainians and Jews, a new aggression is taking place, with new massacres and atrocities against innocent people. This time with the aggressor's most repulsive, twisted and distorted argument of denazification. What are the meaning by the operation of denazification? Bombing the Holocaust memorial at Babi Yar, torturing and killing people in Bucha, shelling power plants and residential buildings. This is just barbarian acts conceived by a twisted mind. So we need to resist evil, that it will not never repeat itself in a new form. World deed: define, recognize, and punish the crimes committed by the Nazi leaders. But it didn't be the case with the totalitarian communist regime atrocities. And from that unsolved duty of mankind, we see the evil rose again. If the communist crimes would have been defined and stated by the international community in the same manner as we did with the totalitarian Nazism, the colonel lieutenant of KGB would never be a ruler of Russia. So this is something we have to learn from the near past, that if we will fail to act, the history, there is a threat that history will repeat itself in the worst way. So let's act, let's think on the martyrs of Holocaust, and let's stay for Ukraine, its brave people, its fighters, and all nation. Thank you, Vera, for coming, and now we are going to start discussion. Thank you.
Where you'd like to sit? Right wing. Okay. Democratic choice.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for your thoughtful messages and speeches. I think there are so many topics from here that we can now further elaborate on. Thank you also for those present here. I'll turn to you soon also for questions. But first I'd like to start with something that you, Vice President, said in your speech, that the Eastern Europeans now have to learn how to be heard. And I think that's something which is here in Estonia, we have often sometimes the perception in the public that indeed Brussels or the European Union, it's still something that they decide, that we are not so much as actively part in it as we should be. Of course, knowing the truth behind it, you know, that the Estonian politicians, the Estonian diplomats, they're all very actively pursuing this. But I think you, in your experience in the Czech Republic, have a similar thing. So how do you answer to those people which are worried about the way we are heard and the way we are acting, and that it's us, not them?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I forgot to say one thing. I wanted to thank Estonians for what you are doing for Ukrainian refugees, because it's amazing. You opened your houses, your hearts, and it should be mentioned, because I think that in Estonia you have the biggest number compared with the number of population. We have a similar figure in Czechia. My granddaughter, who is 2 years old, is learning Czech words from Ukrainian girl in the kindergarten. So when I saw it, it was really touching. To your question, I think that it's a bit our fault that we are not pronouncing our opinions with bigger self-confidence. We are mature people. We are in the EU since 2004. We joined the EU together. So I think that there is still some space. At the same time, I really hate the horrible, evil speech what I hear sometimes from some extremists, that Brussels is something like Moscow. I remember what Moscow was. Before 1968, Brezhnev said, "Eto vaše dělo, solve it yourself, you are sovereign state." And the next week, we had the tanks in our streets. So you know, I really hate this comparison. So I think that there is still space for the newcomers to have a stronger voice and to have more decision-making positions. I have to be pragmatic on that. Next year will be elections to the European Parliament. And you know, it's not only about European Parliament, it's also about the new Commission, about who will be the new High Representative for Foreign Affairs, who will be the President of the European Council. There are big jobs. Some of them should be filled in by big East Europeans. So it's not a message for myself. I'm finishing next year in European politics, but I think that this is also the way to get more into the European matters and to be better heard. I was visited by maybe hundreds of ministers already. I am in the Commission already the 9th year. And when the minister opens the door and starts speaking, I know whether the EU is a foreign affair or whether it's mine, it's ours, yeah? Urmas, whenever you opened my door, I knew that the EU is your topic. But it's not the case of everybody. And it's so easy sometimes for Eastern European politicians to say, EU, it's a foreign affair, it's something in Brussels. And I think that it's not helping. Yeah?
Thank you. I would like to turn to you, Urmas, with the same, because you've been a minister so many times that I've lost count, but meaning you've been to so many different council formations, that how do you see it from there? I mean, you've been at the present there, making all these decisions, taking those decisions on behalf of Estonia, together with the other Europeans.
Although the context is very painful, the council meetings and all the communication with the Commission, between the member states on European Union things, is very interesting, more interesting than ever in the past, because it is so existential. And so there are so many dimensions that we can't never get on the basis of just solely cooperating between countries to support Ukraine and tackle Russian aggression, when we are doing now in the format of European Union with the help of Commission. And of course, Commission has it as a basis to be a certain mediator, but I think the Estonia and other like-minded countries who will call in a systematic pace to more action, I do feel that the Commission approach is on the same line. What we know practically need to be done is to implement 10th package without any derogations to the current sanctions. This is Estonian position. Secondly, we need to review Russian crude oil price gap. Well, the $60 is a joke in that context, that although it has turned that the Brent and Urals price levels are differing, but still this is not what we agreed on December, that our intent is that it has to be at least 5% lower than Russian crude oil market price, which is far less than 50 now. Okay, it's debated what the current price level is. And thirdly, the Commission is now studying, and we will encourage Commission and give any support on the work on crime of aggression special tribunal, or the ways of how to handle the crime of aggression, and secondly also how to deal with this frozen money, particularly of Russian Federal Bank. Whether this is 300 billion or a little bit less, 300 billion or less or bigger, this is an issue we will solve, I'm sure, but this is something we need to do urgently. And also, what is very important, to ramp up the European Peace Facility altitude. Now we have, for this year, we raised the level for 2 billion, but we look already at the Ramstein pledges, and they're going to be for next month and so on. So this is actually enough on a week's basis, not only to believe that this is well, even to this spring fall, as unfortunately we see that also the combat is intensifies, also by Russian planned counter-offensive. So there is a vast list of issues to do. Commission is working intensively, and we are fully supportive of the actions.
Thank you. I will turn now to, I see already our Czech ambassador here who would like to ask a question. So please, David, have the microphone.
Thank you very much, Vivian. Thanks, Commissioner and Minister. Well, indeed, as Vivian already suggested, I happen to represent the country that you know the best, here in Tallinn, and I want to thank you for your interventions. And I would like to pick up on two issues that were recently mentioned by Mr. Reinsalu, and that's firstly the special tribunal to prosecute the crime of aggression. I would just like to draw the attention to the fact that the so-called core group has met for the first time, I think, yesterday in Prague. But I would also like to mention that, in my opinion, you know, this actually shows that the countries of our region are capable of leadership, you know, and showing the way. Because I've been following the debate a little bit, and I know at the beginning it was mainly Baltic countries, Czechia, Poland on board, and some of our, let's say, Western European friends were a bit hesitant, but now the group has really grown much bigger, and it includes some of the big EU member states, such as France and Germany. But I would like perhaps to ask the Commission if you can comment on your views. What should be the European Union role in this process? Because there are, you know, different ideas. It could be the European Union. It can be kind of a hybrid tribunal, domestic Ukrainian tribunal with some kind of international component. So whether there has been any debate in the college, and what's your opinion? And on the idea of confiscating the frozen assets and using them for the reconstruction, I know, Minister, that it's a topic that is very close to your heart, and that you recently kind of floated the idea that Estonia can lead the way and adopt the domestic legislation. So if you can share with us any details, you know, where this is standing and what we can expect in the nearest future. Thank you.
Good news.
Yeah, I'll try to be short because maybe there will be more questions. As Urmas said, now it's so serious, at the same time interesting to debate because it's existential. The decisions we are taking now will influence Europe for decades to come. I'm convinced about that. And regarding Ukraine, there are things to be done now. Military help, macroeconomic financial support, plus humanitarian support. Three things, I'm simplifying. There are three things to be done for the hopefully near future. And it's the plan for realistic reconstruction, using as much as possible Russian money. Again, I'm very blunt, and I believe that we have to find a way how to use the frozen assets and the money, because the people will never understand that the perpetrator who demolished the country does not pay. Yeah? That the bill is given to somebody else to pay. So this is one thing, reconstruction of Ukraine and using the confiscated and frozen assets. And the lawyers are now searching the best possible solution, because for confiscated money it's possible, for frozen assets we still have to find a way. The second thing is the punishment of the war crimes, and I agree that it's genocide, and I think that we have to look into how to restore justice. We will discuss next week in Kiev, when the college is going to meet the government, the way forward regarding the tribunal. At this moment, the Commission position is that it might be a special tribunal established in Ukraine with the foreign participation and support. But this is under development. The third thing regarding the future, of course, is accession. And in spring, Ukraine will deliver the report on the progress. I cannot believe how the country is doing that, because they are in horrible war, and at the same time the administration is working with full speed on fulfilling the milestones for the accession. So full admiration. And again, next week we will discuss it, and I believe that they might do a good progress. For me, accession is not a black and white thing. So I believe in staging integration. Already we are doing it through the common project in infrastructure, the electricity grid, the roaming. So there are ways how to prolong the invitation or make it closer to presence, and to invite Ukraine and Moldova and hopefully also Georgia by staged method to EU. Would you like to add?
Yes, we are now in coming days' time. We are going to present to the government the legal concept how to do it on our national piece of legislation basis. This confiscation take place. Of course, we will. Our intent is to have a pan-European solution, and therefore we welcome creation of this register office in Hague. I spoke with my colleague from Netherlands. Estonia is most supportive. We would like to help also logistically on digital solutions of digital, whatever practical need is. It's going to be created most possible, hopefully on a basis of international treaty. And what is important, actually we need to understand that there is already a full-scale precedent in law. And once a country has defined it legally, I spoke last week with Ukrainian Ministry of Justice people, President's Office people. Ukraine has passed the laws of confiscation of Russian federal assets and also the sanctioned the Russian subjects acts property. So the precedent is fully created. We follow with great interest also the Canadian example. The Canadians are thriving basically the same concept, and our message is to all countries to work intensively to encourage working out the European solution and to do that. But speaking from this about the International Tribunal, I remember the things are very paradigmatically changing. These people who looked the ideas of revolutionary ideas in the way now look moderate, and moderate ideas look conservative. So I remember when in September we raised Baltic foreign ministers this pledge of tribunal. It was taken maybe not as a central piece. Now I'm truly welcome that in the course of last weeks Germany has joined the core group on tribunal and crime of aggression. France has joined, and I on Tuesday spoke with my UK colleague. UK will also join. So basically we are now seeing the shift. And so this gives me a basis that we have to understand what is this aggression crime tribunal so serious. This actually defines who we are. And also it is a lackmus. Can we imagine that after a war, if the Putin regime remains, we could imagine a return to the business as before the war?
We need to continue being decisive together in the EU. And I have to say I appreciate what the Western politicians are doing, because for us it's a natural thing to take a strong stance on the side of Ukraine. Maybe it's more difficult for those who are not so close through history and through geography. Yeah? So we have to appreciate the unity and to be able to keep it. The second thing, what you said, Urmas, never again. Well, this is here again, yeah? And that's why I think that we have to repeat again and again that the action has to be stable, decisive, and no concessions, yeah? Because we know where appeasement leads from the history.
Thank you. I will see if there's another question there, please. Please introduce yourself also.
Hello, my name is Hans Luik. I'm a journalist and a publisher. I would like to further elaborate on the particular question of confiscating and expropriating Russian Federation from the frozen assets they deposited with the Western coalition countries, assumably in their central banks. As our minister mentioned, those sums are huge. I've been writing on it. 300 billion is the biggest sum I've ever touched in any of my articles now. To his big shock, our member of European Parliament, Mr. Urmas Reinsalu, who has also been hosting us in this building as a minister, he got a non-answer from the European Commission, particularly Commissioner McGuinness, the Commissioner of Finance. McGuinness was not answering to his question, which he posted in an open forum, as it's the rule in Euroopa Parliament, 1.5 months ago. That was after President Ursula von der Leyen, in her 30th of November declaration, had told that we have been freezing, she used the word blocking, 300 plus billion of Russian Federation Central Bank assets. Now, the sanctions were being announced almost 1 year ago, that is 26th of February, 11 months ago. Where are those assets? Yesterday, we had the chance of reading the Bloomberg report on that, nicely placed on as the first topic on Bloomberg Web, saying that only 39 billions, instead of 300, have been detected on central banks' accounts of the coalition. Would you be in a position as a Vice President for Values and Transparency to bring some more transparency to this question? Because our Member of Parliament, Urmas Reinsalu, got none, about which he was pretty irritated and posted another open letter in this time in a more vitriolic forum. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes, I hope he will not send it to me. Yes. I receive a lot of vitriolic letters anyway. No, I have to check with my colleague McGuinness. I know it was the question on system, but also this individual question which was not replied on time. Well, the reply would probably be that indeed this is the money which has been blocked, and I remember very well that night when it happened, because the Russians came, I don't know, 6 hours late. Yeah.
If it did happen.
It did happen.
Indeed.
Yeah. The problem is that still we don't have a legally sound solution how to use the money for the reconstruction and for useful things, because we can, according to current rules, we can keep the frozen assets during unlimited time, but the other side can sue us for doing that. But we need to use the money for reconstruction, which is not the case of frozen assets. Only you need the confiscation.
I need to specify here.
Yeah.
The question of Urmas Reinsalu was exactly at which accounts of which central banks of the EU or the Western Coalition, Japan also being not the West, but still member of G7, on which bank accounts have those billions been frozen? That was the question.
Yeah, I don't know it at this moment, so he will have to wait for the reply from the responsible commissioner.
Yes, but Hans has raised this issue on the basis of this one Atlantic Council report, which studied it. And well, we have to rely on Commission information in that context, that because member states will declare not vis-à-vis by each other, but indeed to the Commission what are the frozen assets. And if I hope this is the case, this amount is, because as bigger as better. But before the fall of start of this stage of war, basically there was proportionally, these hundreds were before the start of war. The assets which were in Western banks, and the majority of Russian reserve assets were transferred to Chinese banks. So this was actually the trend. So, and I hope there is a solid portion. I hope the 300 is a legitimate figure, but I think the future will work out.
It was more than 300, yeah.
So, but still, this is a bigger amount, the assets in a combined manner, than we, the Western community, has in a combined manner last year supported Ukraine, either militarily, humanitarian, economic support. So it is a game changer if we could use that.
Up to now, we invested altogether 49 billion, I think, when we count everything. Yeah, military support, macroeconomic, and humanitarian.
Absolutely, and when it comes still to the To the assets, then of course we have the two different kinds. We have the frozen assets and the blocked assets. And the assets of the central bank, the Russian central bank, they're blocked. There have been no transactions that have been able to do with them. And this is what we're now looking at, of course, is how to make sure that we use it to what should be their rightful use. I will look for the last question because, of course, time is, and they have over there. Thank
Something
you.
easier, please.
Yes, that's leading foreign policy journalist. So.
Hans owns also half of Estonian private media, so he looks like journalist, but he's also media tycoon.
No, I saw it immediately that the gentleman is a journalist.
Okay, I'm also a journalist, just a journalist and not owning anything. Okay, so I wanted to ask about specific project, the EU versus disinformation. At one point it was presented as a solution to Russian disinformation. Now it looks like an obscure database. Do you think it's really working, this project?
I didn't hear the beginning. What?
The EU versus disinformation, the project under
Yes,
External Action Service. It seems that you don't know about it either, so.
No. Of course, the fight against disinformation had some stages. Now we are in information war, and we are facing the big influx of the Russian propaganda, which has the only many different purposes, but the main purpose is to decrease the trust of people and their support for the help to Ukraine. Yeah, so that's why we see it in all the member states with almost comparable intensity, because the Russian propaganda used to be focused mainly on Eastern and Central European countries. What we do against that, and I would not call it obscure mechanism or obscure solution, because the disinformation became extremely dangerous when it found the tool for amplification, which is the digital platform. That's why we reacted on this new kind of danger by the legislation. I have in mind the Digital Services Act, which increases the responsibility of the platforms for the content they distribute. First of all, we oblige the platforms not to distribute criminal content, which is terrorism and violent extremism, child pornography and hate speech, a manifestly clear hate speech, so hate speech which has the potential to incite violence in real life. I discussed it with your Minister of Justice this morning about the definition. And as for disinformation, we have the code of practice, which is voluntary agreement with the platforms, but also with advertising industry, with many civil society organizations, which is a mechanism when there is a broad caring of the content. So nobody in Europe is determined as the arbiter of the truth. The ultimate body is the court, yeah? In case there is a dispute about what is disinformation and what is not. But our code of practice is a very broad exercise where there are many different bodies involved, and we believe that it might bring quite good progress. But we don't want censorship, yeah? So that's why we work so carefully with the phenomenon of disinformation.
Thank you. But thank you so much, Vice President, and thank you, Urmas Minister, for hosting us here. I think for the day of today, the 27th of January, also the Holocaust Remembrance Day, you said, we always have said never again, and now I think our path is very clear to be really working on that. So thank you very much for your presence here.